Hi, everyone. This is Aaron, and you are listening to the Sound Words Podcast, the official podcast of musicgoon.com. I typically interview worship leaders, but today's first time guest is Hannah Chao. Hannah is the editor and digital administrator for the SOLA Network. SOLA Network exists to influence the emerging generation with the gospel of Jesus Christ. It serves as a digital platform for evangelical leaders, writers, speakers, and bloggers who share the same values of faith to provide gospel-centered resources. Hannah attends All Nations Community Church, where she is also the executive administrator. Thanks for listening. Hannah, this is our first time talking and actually doing a podcast for it. Thanks for doing this with me.
No problem. I'm very excited to be here.
It's a funny relationship that you and I have. You're my editor. I've never had an editor before. Tell me, how did you get to become an editor for SOLA?
Yeah, so editing is something that I've always been passionate about. So I did journalism at USC for college, my undergrad, and then I kind of let it go for a couple years. I got married. I became an administrator at my church, but then about a year or two ago, Pastor Steve Chang, who's part of SOLA Council, reached out to me and asked if I could edit because he heard from another council member, Pastor Michael, who's my pastor and my boss, that I edit. And so at first I came in on as a volunteer. We were pretty small, maybe an article a week, few a month. But then the more I got involved, the more articles we got and I would accept. And then eventually I got hired
So
part-time, and now I haven't looked back.
this is like at the beginning stages of SOLA, or was SOLA already like a thing before they brought you on board?
So Sola Digital was just starting out when I started out as a volunteer. We had done the conference for a couple of years by that point, and one of the executive members for the conference said, if we're going to be a bigger presence and actually, try to make a bigger ripple effect, we need to be in people's lives during the year. They need to think about us and look to us as a resource. And so why don't we just provide a few resources for collegiates online? And so that but then if we did that, at a certain point, they were like, hey, like none of us, those for the initial people, they were like, we don't really have any experience with publishing or articles or websites. So that's when they found me. And so we've actually been really putting a lot more resources into Sola only since October of 2018.
Yeah.
So that's when we started to really push for more articles a week. And I think starting end of last year, 2018, we started to try to do an article a day, which
Yeah.
at first sounded crazy, but now it's been really good.
Yeah, no, I really do feel that like when you guys push out articles, it is pretty consistent now. They're quality articles too. It's not just kind of like, random thoughts or anything. There's actual intention behind what's being posted and in a timely manner as well. I
I'm
think
glad you noticed.
I think one of the first times I saw your name, I'm pretty sure this was even before you and I had a relationship, was the Crazy Rich Asians article. I think that was the first one
Yes.
that caught my eye. I knew about Sola, but for some reason, I guess all the, everything just kind of clicked together at that moment in time where Sola and Crazy Rich Asians, everything was just cataclysmic, I guess.
Yeah, no, I really think that, the timing, obviously, God's timing too, but
Yeah, yeah.
it was really,
Yeah.
but it was just an interesting time, I think, for Asian Americans, Christian Asian Americans, where we could really speak into just this idea of identity. As Christians, we know that our identity really comes from, being made in the image of God
That's
and
right.
being children of God, right? And so to be able to look at something like Asian representation in the media and really say like, hey, like we don't want to erase that. We want to really speak into how God has created us as Asian Americans. And so, yeah, so that was part of, SOLA conference,
Yeah.
having this Asian American Christian conference, and then having Crazy Rich Asians come out and having a platform where we could have writers write about it. Cause it wasn't just me at the time. I
Right.
saw
Yeah.
a lot
Yeah.
of articles,
Okay.
right?
Of
But then
course. Yeah.
but then still to have that platform where people could write and share. I don't know how you saw the article, but actually Brett McCracken from Gospel Coalition asked if I could kind of rewrite it for a broader audience and put it on the Gospel Coalition website. And to have people react to it and like so many people, like I felt very weird as an Asian. We can't take pride in anything we do. Yeah, but at the same time, like I had people who I didn't know, like personally, come up to me and say, "I read your article like for example, another thing that happened around that same time was the Gospel Coalition had a West Coast presence for the first time in 2018, and Kevin DeYoung was there, and like Ray Ortland was there, and we had a Asian pre-conference, and even at that pre-conference, I ran into people who once they met, like I introduced myself, they would say, "I read your article," and I was
Nice.
that's
Nice.
so it was weird, but at the same time, like I really felt at that time, and I'm so glad to be reminded that hey, like there is so much space and room and yeah, for us as Asian Americans
Yeah,
to write.
absolutely. Okay, so maybe this is a little bit personal now, but like, has this whole Asian American slash Christian, or vice versa, I guess, has that always been a part of your like thought process, especially into your writing? I guess before
No,
Sola.
no, I don't think so. I mean, coming from a like nonfiction background of journalism, especially you want to be like nonpartisan, non-biased. So you really don't want to do too much to yourself. And yet I do think that, as I've gotten more confident in my identity, but also just reading a lot more, we when we see when we read articles, for example, of a like an African American journalist writing about African American issues, they do have a perspective that is important, even if it's non-biased journalism, that they can ask certain questions, they can have certain doors opened. And I realized as an Asian American that is so important too. And I don't write quite as much, and I do a lot more editing, but just to even expose our readers to some of the same stuff that like a white person or a white American or a Black American might write, but they'll just click it because they know Sola Network. Maybe they don't know Desiring God or 9 Marks or something, but they know Sola. To be able to even be able to have people access it that way, I think that's important too, just that we can use as part of our heritage.
And I think that Sola does fill a niche there with the Asian American Christian. I don't believe that there's anybody doing that right now. Are there like competitors to Sola? I don't know. I don't
Yeah,
know if
yeah,
there
no,
are.
I definitely think so. I think, well, so Sola, because we're reformed and we're and a lot and our values align with the Gospel Coalitions, we're definitely more conservative on that on
Okay.
the Christian spectrum.
Yeah, I should
We
add
do
that.
there,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right, right. So
Right,
there, I
right,
mean,
right.
there is like Inheritance, which
Oh,
is
of
a lot more
course. Right,
progressive, but
right, right, right.
they have a pretty big presence. They're I feel like they're actually well known. Where Sola, we're definitely not as well known as Inheritance would be. Just in terms of reach because they've been around a lot longer. They had a print magazine for a while. They had a lot of big names attached with them. But yeah, I do. But I think that was another part of the reason for Sola Conference and Sola. The website was we just need to show the world that we're here, right? And to say that we're a resource for Christians who are, curious about their faith.
Tell me a little bit about what you do as an editor, I guess. I mean, you have a background in this, but like an article every week, or like every day, every day of the week. That sounds a lot.
Yeah, so it really is a lot. So the biggest thing as an editor is in general what an editor does is we try to find like a rough stone and then we just polish it, right? And sometimes that means you have to like cut the stone to get it to flash, to shine. Sometimes it's minimal. You just, again, just polish it. So that's my job. My job is to help the reader and the writer to just be able to connect in the quick, not quick necessarily, but to be able just to make those connections, right? And so for me, that's just such a joy to take something that is pretty good, but to make it accessible and interesting and fun, even. But then to find articles as an editor, so in terms of procurement, yeah, I scour a lot of blogs. I and then I also just ask around different to either the Sola Council members or other members, like, hey, like anyone write in your church? Anyone have a blog? And then we'll just go from there. And now that actually we're a little bit more well known, we do have people ask if they can contribute articles. So if you're listening to this and you would like to write for us, please email me. My information is on the website.
Yeah, and I'll link to it, of course. Tell me what you want to see from article submissions. Like,
Honestly, the biggest thing is just an interesting angle on something that hasn't been really talked about. I mean, anything that has to do with relating the gospel to the Asian American experience, I think is fascinating, whether it's a testimony or it is something a little bit more like theologically based. For example, one of the most popular articles we've had, Fred Mock from Garden City Church up in the Bay, he wrote on Asian Americans and shame.
okay, yes, I
And
remember that
it
article.
had a lot of good, but then also we had one of our our editorial board members, Thomas Wing. He has a perpetually popular article like, what is it okay to have sex before marriage? And
It keeps coming up, huh?
every month it is one of the top 5 most read.
Oh, wow,
Because
okay.
because of Google searches. People just Google like, is it okay to have sex before marriage? And for some reason with Google's algorithms, his just pops up, and that's how people find our website too. So if you have a simple idea that's just written well, that will rise to the top as well. So
You're not looking for pastors.
no, and honestly, sorry, pastors, but y'all articles are too long. They send me like 2,000 word essays, and I'm like, no. And because as for a pastor, right, when you're really taught to like have an extended metaphor, right, or to have an illustration that's like perfect. But on a phone, which most of our readers read our articles through phones, your illustration can be maybe like a paragraph, 2 if it's really good, or rarely will I keep an illustration that lingers for like 200-300 words. A good article is probably right around 1,000, sometimes as short as 750. If it's really good, I will let you go longer, but it's got to be really good. But yeah, I mean, if you're on your phone, you don't want to read, a 5-10 minute, article. You're on the potty, and you want to read an article for a minute.
Yeah, so
I know you guys.
You know all the stats then. Are you the one that does all the analytics for the site?
So I do have a web guy. So in terms of my team, it's me. I do most of the editing, procuring. I have a social media gal, Jen Yim, who's amazing. She posted on Facebook, does Instagram, and then Isaac, her and Cal, who does some of the Instagram things too. And then Isaac is our web guy, but he has taught me how to kind of delve in and see, page views over the week, over the month, and look at what kind of devices. Guys, Google knows everything you're doing.
Yeah, you can see everything.
But I'm glad for it, because I mean, I get to see just what resonates with our audience, and also just to know that people are reading. It's an encouragement to us, because no one really, as Asians, again, we don't really comment on things
or share.
Or share. Well, sharing, yeah, that's true. We just kind of look and we're like, that was interesting. But I do think that when I see the numbers, like for example, we had one article like why Chinese evangelicals are conservative or something like that.
Okay. Oh yeah, I remember,
and it was published a year ago, and it just had a giant bump. Maybe because it was of someone's memory and like it got rebumped or something. But it's just fascinating to see like what people just come up with. Maybe I'll email him and ask him, could you reshare this?
Yeah, right. I know. Yeah. Internally, just emailing everybody your article.
Yeah. I mean, because we do want, we're not doing this for money, we're not trying to like, but we just want people to know about the resources that we have out there. And also I think an important part of SOLA is helping Asian American Christians to find their voice and to develop it. There aren't a lot of places for that, right? It's really hard to just go from your blog to like the Gospel Coalition. But if they can hone their skills a little bit here at SOLA, and then we've had Gospel Coalition editors ask us like, hey, like we really like this article, can we contact the author and republish? And we're like, please, do it. And so yeah, I think that's another reason why I'm really excited to be an editor here at SOLA, just to help voices to grow.
When you get an article submission, do you have in your mind like, okay, this one's going to blow up? Or do you have those preconceived like, notions or expectations?
I definitely do. But the audience always surprises me. So so I realize certain things like things that are written for pastors actually either go really big or really small, because either the pastors share it.
Yeah.
or they ignore it
Right.
because, or and not that they ignore it. Sorry, like the rest of the audience,
Right.
they
Right.
ignore it, right?
Right.
Because it's written for pastors.
Right. Yes. Yes.
But then certain things that I'm like, oh, you know what? Like, I don't know if people will be interested. It blows up. For example, we posted something last week: 4 reasons why Christians can dance.
Okay. Yes. Oh, yes.
And
Yeah. That one blew up, right?
yes,
Yeah.
and I think it's because people want to know, like, hey, like, what does it mean to be, free and have freedom in Christ? And for example, dance and versus like, sometimes things that can be very theological.
Yeah.
I wish people would read more, but
Right.
it can
Right.
be more difficult,
Yes. Right.
So I think we have to have both, even if, it doesn't get, the viral clicks, if we have interesting content that lead people to reading some of the deeper articles, I'm all for that. And that dance article was good.
It was good. It was good. Okay, let's get a little bit nerdy here, Hannah. I want to know
Sure.
the tools that you use for your editing. What are we talking about? Are we talking about Google Docs? What kind of computer do you have?
Yeah, so I use my MacBook Air. Is this an Air? I think so. The newer one that's like just like a cheaper MacBook. In any case, I prefer using my dual monitors, whether that's with my Mac or at home. I have a desktop PC, and so both of those I use Google Docs because it's just the easiest collaboration tool with my writers. And then I also use Grammarly, which is like this free grammar software. It doesn't work on Firefox very well yet. I don't remember. Maybe it does now, but on Chrome it works great. Just if you guys ever want it, it's free. If you want premium, you have to pay, but just the free is fine. And then, to keep track of all of these articles and people and photos and headshots, I actually use this cool new thing called Airtable. So move over Trello, move over whatever else, Slack.
Yes. Yeah.
So Airtable is it's big now because it's starting to be on podcast like ads.
Sponsorships.
Airtable.
Yeah.
So basically, it's like a very cool Excel spreadsheet that it just keeps track of things really well. They have their own templates that I modified, but it works great. Airtable, if you need to keep track of things with a team, it works fantastic. I recommend it. Please sponsor this podcast.
Yeah,
Airtable.
I know, right? Yeah, we'll take it. You normally work from home, Hannah?
So I work from home. If I have a few spare hours at work, at church, maybe I'll do it there. But yeah, 95% is at home. Yeah, and I'll just sit in front of my computer and just start typing away, highlighting, deleting.
Are you listening to music? You got like TV on in the background?
No, I cannot focus if there's music, especially lyrics. I can do some like not ambient, but like some like electronic soft quietness in the back. But even like I can't even do like acoustic or piano versions of praise songs because I'll just start drifting. I think because I work so much with words, I can't think about other words. I have to be very careful about that. And then also I just get distracted very easily. So I have to be in general, I have to think very clearly about what I'm writing. One thing that I do recommend for writers, though, is please never delete your drafts.
Oh, okay.
So even when I edit, I never delete drafts. What I'll do is I'll either copy it into another doc, and I'll work from the new doc, or I'll just copy and paste it in the same doc, and I'll just edit the draft that's at the top of the page. Just because you never know what sentence that you delete will just come back and you're like, oh wait, that was the perfect sentence. That happens to me all the time.
No.
I'll just go on like a big cutting spree, or I'll just be moving paragraphs around, and then I'm like, oh, that sentence that was really good, I can insert it here. It's almost like a puzzle.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It sounds like what you're doing.
Yeah, and so I mean, you can track changes in Google, but you just Google Docs, but you never know, like if something disappears somewhere or whatever. So yeah, please never delete your drafts. Even if you hate them, you can just like drag them to a different folder, but don't delete your drafts.
What's your normal turnaround for an article? Let's say that somebody submits to you and you like what they got. Like, what are we looking at? A week? A month?
Yeah, a week. A week is great.
That's a fast
a week
turnaround.
Is great.
That's really fast.
So a week would generally be if someone who's pretty polished as a writer, or maybe I found it on a blog and it's already pretty good. And then we just need to do like one or two back and forths to kind of get it where we're both satisfied. And that's good. If someone's writing something from scratch, then yeah, that could take longer, week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. For example, like Fred Mock is actually writing another article on shame and Jesus and Asian Americans. It's that took us a couple weeks. He also went on vacation in the middle, but that's
Yeah,
not
that
no
was.
one's fault. But it really just depends. I mean, one of our writers, Michael Agapito, I don't remember his last name, but he's doing our creeds and confessions,
Right.
right?
Yeah, I recognize
His
that.
are
Yeah.
his are pretty much ready to go by the time he sends it to me. Because part of it helps because he's working directly from a creed and just
Right.
like
Yeah. It's
analyzing, going back and forth.
You're like, oh, I can make that creed a little bit better.
Yeah, he's not doing that, and I'm not doing that,
Yeah.
right? But generally speaking, the more seasoned a writer, the better. If the article's already a good length, the better. But yeah, if it's a week is generally good, like a full week. But sometimes up to 2 weeks, just depending on the quality or just trying to get through it. But most people who submit at least think they're competent writers, no
Yeah.
one's like, so
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever gotten anything where I was like, oh, I like can't do anything with this. So
Okay, last question on the article thing. For some reason, I'm really
sure.
fascinated with this behind the scenes stuff. But like, how many articles are you normally juggling at one time?
Honestly, I would love to do like 4 or 5 because that means I'm ahead.
That's a lot.
But if I have to publish 4 a week, right? That means by the Friday, I should be at least 2 or 3
I
ready,
see. I
right?
see. I
For
see.
Monday. So
Yeah, I
having
see.
4 or 5 would be ideal because then I'm completely done with the week and I'm a week ahead. Whereas, yeah, so I have to be very vigilant. So for example, this week I had Mondays ready. Tuesdays I finished today. I'm not sure what's gonna run Wednesday or Thursday, but I'll figure it out. No, I do have Thursday. I just need to figure out Wednesday, but I have one in the wings.
That's awesome.
But yeah, it's a little bit stressful, but I found ways to kind of help myself. So having a series during a month is really helpful because then I can look for a theme and just kind of, for example, I'm going on vacation this month for a little bit. So I've already pre-planned like a prayer series for we're praying for the certain countries based on the prayer requests of people who either live there or are of that
Oh.
culture,
Oh,
right?
nice,
And
nice,
now
nice.
I've already prepped that, so that's
Yeah, yeah.
good.
No, that's really
So I'm not
good.
stressed.
No, that's great. Okay. So you already told us we have this prayer series coming up.
Yes.
What else is coming to Sola that you can tell us? Is there any secret stuff we should know or
Oh man, I wish. But yeah, so June we're gonna try to do so that's this prayer series where we're gonna pray for different countries. I think we have at least 6 countries as of now. It's from all the way from let's see, we have like Norway to Myanmar. I think we have in India too. So like then I think that there's one country in Africa too, maybe Kenya. But anyway, we were able through just some of the council members find some contacts internationally, especially because a lot of churches do send short-term mission teams over the summer. I thought this would just be a way to like the Philippines, just a way to encourage people to just learn a little bit more about a country and pray for them more specifically. And then July, I'll get back to you. August, we're actually looking for people to write about maybe encouragements or exhortations to collegians who are either going to be freshmen, maybe those who have kind of are doing a non-traditional college route. Right. I feel like there's a lot of, especially with just the expenses of college, right? Like there's a lot of people who are like taking a community college route or are working first, but then they feel behind, right? And I think that's even at our church, that's really hard. We have a college group and a young adult group, but that line is really blurry now. How do we really support those whose friends might be going to a 4-year college, but they're not, right? For example. But also, and then maybe a little bit an exhortation for those who've just graduated and now feel August, but they're like,
right.
I've lost, there's a lot of, soul searching when it comes to losing your college identity.
Oh
So
yeah. Oh
those
yeah.
are some of the things I'm looking forward to reading about and editing for
Yeah.
August.
No,
And
that
then,
sounds really exciting.
mhm.
Hannah, you have a newsletter that I know that you kind of just started. Why don't you
My
tell me
personal
about?
newsletter.
Yeah, why don't you tell me about this newsletter? How'd you come up with this idea? Is this like a permanent thing that you're going to be doing for like until your last breath? Like, what is this?
So yeah, so for the longest time, not for the longest time, sorry, let me back up. So um obviously I do have a creative outlet through Sola, but but I realized I don't write as much for Sola. I edit a lot, and so but I do have a lot of thoughts and like little writing things that might not necessarily be very Sola adjacent or even or Sola specific. Things about culture, or just random musings. So I was really trying to make a blog, but I kept procrastinating, and I got like a WordPress site, and I was like, oh, I don't want to do this, and so it just kind of sat there. And then I actually follow several, not personally, but like I've noticed people like on Twitter have these newsletters on Substack. For example, I don't know if you follow Michael Ware. He used to be director of communications or something, community outreach, Christian outreach for Barack Obama. He has like a
Oh,
newsletter.
okay. Mhm.
There anyway, and then there's like people. So it's like a new-ish startup where basically your blog goes straight into people's inboxes. And I was like, huh. And I was like, I have enough friends who will sign up for this. And so it's just a way for
That's
me
always a good
to,
start. Yeah.
yeah, it's just a way for me to just write some silly things, but also serious things, musings that, if they become an article, great. If not, that's fine. No big deal. And then the best part though, Aaron, is it tells you your audience engagement because they can tell you like what percentage people have clicked on your link.
So you have
That's the
some
biggest thing about a
analytics on
blog.
there too. Yeah.
But that's the thing about a blog. Like you're like people might comment or they
Mhm.
might like it, but like
Yeah.
you just never know.
Yeah.
But this way, we can actually kind of utilize them more. We're actually also thinking for Sola, like maybe that will be kind of the next thing that we do. Maybe either finding ways to like ask people like, hey, like, would you like it if we did it like an Asian every time that we publish an Asian American article, would you like it to come to your inbox? Or every time we did like an article on theology or something like that, where I mean that's something we're thinking about just because Facebook is changing its algorithms now. They're trying to be a lot more like share like they'll like it, they'll like an article better if like you share it on your page versus an entity sharing it on a page. They're all about like engagement and like stuff like that. So if that's the case and we get the majority of our traffic from our Facebook posts, then how do we reach people where they are? And that might be it might be a newsletter, but then man, email inboxes are already so full.
I know. That's
So
that's really the thing is that like that market for email
mhm.
is already pretty saturated. But
Yeah.
what can you say? I made room for yours, and I recommend it. I recommend
Thank you.
your newsletter.
Thank you.
It's filled with a lot of good stuff. You're on Twitter, Hannah. You got a Twitter habit, but I guess I do too. So what can I
Yeah.
say?
But yeah, it's but so what I realized is though, like I'm curating my Twitter habits a little better. Like I'm unfollowing people who aren't interesting to me anymore. People, as in like there are certain people who just have opinions that I'm just like, I don't need this opinion in my
No,
life.
you're
It
absolutely
might be,
right.
I do use Twitter though as like a way to hear more opinions. So I do want to be careful about that just because I myself personally, like my bubble is pretty Asian American and Asian American Christian. So I do want to get more opinions and more voices. At the same time, I can be more judicious about how I curate my social media habits. And I think this has been good. I'm happy with where I am right now.
No, yeah, I'm glad to hear it. And I appreciate everything that you send my way via your newsletter. So keep them coming.
Great. I
Um,
will.
Thanks for doing this podcast, Hannah. I think this was a successful podcast. We'll put it out on Sola and then
Yeah.
we'll see if anybody listens to it and yeah, hopefully they dig it.
They'll get a lot of inside scoop here.
Yeah, this is behind the scenes of Sola digital administration over here. Thanks, Hannah. I'll see you on Twitter.
Yeah. Yes, you will. I'll see you on Twitter too. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks, Hannah, for being my guest on the show, and thank you everyone for listening. Most Fridays, I contribute a curated link column specifically for our SOLA readers. I highlight articles related to Asian American issues and blog posts written by Asian American authors. I also include some fun recommendations for the weekend. Find my columns at sola.network. Please send me your feedback or questions for follow-up for the Soundwords podcast. You can even send me any questions specifically for Hannah to follow up on, and I'll be sure to get to them in the next few episodes. In the show notes, you'll find links to the Soundwords podcast archive. And don't forget to subscribe to Sound Words on YouTube, Spotify, or your favorite podcast player. Just search for Sound Words. My website is musicgoon.com. The email address for this podcast is soundwords@musicgoon.com. And you can always tweet me at musicgoon. Thanks. See you soon.